The Devil's Mayhem Motorcycle Club believed they were untouchable in Montana's ranch country, a brutal force that had built its empire on blood, intimidation, and silence, leaving shattered families and shuttered businesses across 3 states in their wake. But on a soft spring night that smelled of cedar and gun oil, they made the one mistake that would echo through criminal history. They kidnapped Victoria Kingsley, thinking she was just a 53-year-old rancher's wife, a pawn to pressure her husband into surrendering the last parcel of land they needed for full control of the old canyon road. But what they didn't see, what they couldn't see, was the shadow behind her eyes, the same silent predator that had dismantled 27 high-value targets during her career as the most feared U.S. Marshal in recent memory. A legend known only as the Ghost, a woman who never fired the first shot and never needed to, because if you saw her coming, you were already dead. And now, ZIP tied to a metal chair in a cold warehouse lit by hanging bulbs and surrounded by Montana's most ruthless bikers, Victoria Kingsley is exactly where she wants to be, because justice, real justice, isn't loud or sudden. It's patient, calculated, and merciless. And Devil's Mayhem is about to learn why men still whisper her name long after dark. The morning sun slid over the ridge of the R Ranch, painting gold across the fields as Victoria moved along the perimeter fence with silent precision, her boot prints disappearing behind her in the dew, and to any passerby she looked like just another rancher's wife checking cattle. But she never stopped scanning angles, shadows, movement, and this morning, for the 3rd time that week, she caught the same glint of chrome among the trees, a motorcycle cruising slow along the border. Different riders, same patch, Devil's Mayhem MC, getting braver by the day. And inside the house, Robert Kingsley sat at the kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a mug as he muttered, "They're back again," not looking up from his tablet, his voice heavy with worry but also resignation. Because this wasn't the first morning Devil's Mayhem had circled them like vultures. And Victoria poured her coffee.com, as always, noting one new rider, Red Harley, amateur. Wait too far forward. And Robert, reading between her words after 10 years of marriage, asked the question they both already knew the answer to. "They're not just watching anymore, are they?" "No," she said. "They're building patterns." And as she spoke, her voice carried the cool edge of the hunter returning to the field, outlining how they were testing patrols, deliveries, routines. And Robert, ever the pragmatist, offered, "We could sell." But they both knew that wasn't really on the table, not because of the money or even the land, but because Devil's Mayhem had been carving a path of corruption and coercion across the valley, and this land was the last piece they needed to complete whatever scheme they had planned. And Victoria intended to find out what it was before it cost more lives. The low growl of motorcycles echoed down their long gravel driveway just minutes later, not passing this time but turning, approaching with deliberate menace as Victoria stood at the window, casual in posture, but already calculating every distance, every blind spot, every possible cover. And 3 bikes rolled into flanking a custom chopper ridden by a man she recognized immediately, Vincent Romano, club president, ex-military, suspected of everything from weapons trafficking to contract hits, a man never convicted, yet whose name cast a long shadow in law enforcement circles. And Victoria told Robert to stay inside, her voice the same command tone she once used to direct tactical units in hostile zones, before stepping out onto the porch as the bikes came to a synchronized stop, gravel crunching like dry bones. And Romano, all swagger and theatrical flair, pulled off his sunglasses but stayed on the bike, flanked by 2 younger enforcers who dismounted and spread out with the grace of men trying too hard to her trained eye, exposing their formation like an open playbook. "Mrs. Kingsley," Romano called out, using that greasy salesman's charm perfected over years of criminal dealings. "Beautiful morning for a ride." And Victoria, never breaking the act, replied in the measured tones of a wary landowner, "This is private property." Watching as Romano swung off his bike and began spinning his web about development, about progress, about opportunities for everyone. And as he spoke, his men subtly shifted positions, attempting to flank her like it was some backwoods intimidation routine, unaware she'd already mapped every move they made, filing away their nervous tells, like the way one flinched when Romano reached inside his jacket for a business card, to move that made real killers twitch. Victoria took the card with a small, practiced tremble, the perfect picture of a woman overwhelmed and unsure, just the way they wanted her to be, and she let Romano believe he had the upper hand as he gave her 3 days to decide, then thundered away in a cloud of dust, leaving Victoria on the porch, where her entire posture changed the moment they vanished from sight, the slight tremor gone, stance lowered, weight centered, balance perfect, the hunter no longer hiding in plain sight, but preparing for war. And when Robert stepped out and whispered, "Vicky," she turned, eyes like steel behind that quiet smile, saying softly, "It's starting. They're moving on something big, something they'd kill for." And now they'd made their worst mistake. They'd invited the Ghost to their party. Providence Springs looked the same on the surface, but Victoria knew better beneath the charm of its single main street. Behind the familiar storefronts, now reinforced with cameras and locks, was a community tightening under Devil's Mayhem grip, and when she parked her old Ford outside Mitchell's general store. She noted the cluster of bikes near the door and heard the tension inside before she even stepped through. Rebecca Mitchell, pale but standing firm behind her counter, was facing down 3 bikers to standing menacingly on either side, while the third, wearing a Sergeant Tutam's patch, leaned in and growled threats disguised as business deals, talking about insurance and change, sweeping product off the counter as if to prove a point. And Victoria moved through the aisles with a basket in hand, quietly observing, her presence just beginning to register with them as one biker's hand twitched toward his jacket, a subtle sign, a nervous tick from someone used to muscle, not resistance. And, as Rebecca argued about having already paid dues to the business association, the biker snarled that Sheriff Dawson ain't in charge anymore. And in that moment, Victoria understood, this wasn't just about land or intimidation anymore. Devil's Mayhem was moving into open occupation. A criminal regime with military discipline, and whatever they were planning next, it was going to hit this town like a hammer. A month starting today. Victoria rounded the aisle, her basket filled with normal ranch supplies. She kept her movements deliberate, unthreatening, just another middle-aged woman doing her shopping. "Oh my," she said mildly, stepping in sticky. "Honey, what a mess. Rebecca, do you have a mop? I'd be happy to help clean up." The bikers turned, irritation crossing their faces. The Sergeant Tutam started to speak, but Victoria was already moving past them to the counter, pulling out her wallet. "Adding these to my monthly account," she said cheerfully. "And I'll need a case of that new coffee you got in the whole bean dark roast. Robert says it's amazing." Rebecca blinked, then caught on. "Of course, Vicky, I'll get that from the back. Take your time." Victoria smiled at the bikers. "I'm sure these gentlemen were just leaving, weren't you boys?" The Sergeant Tutam stepped closer, trying to use his bulk to intimidate. "This ain't your business, lady." Victoria's smile remained pleasant, but her eyes changed subtly. Later, the biker would try to explain to his brothers what he saw in those eyes, something cold, something that triggered instincts he'd learned in combat. "My husband's family helped build this town. Rebecca's grandfather gave him his first job, so maybe it is my business." She turned back to her shopping list, dismissing them. The insult was deliberate, calculated. The Sergeant Tutam's face reddened. His hand twitched again toward his jacket. "You should be careful, Mrs. Kingsley," he growled. "Accidents happen." Victoria didn't look up from her list. "Yes, they do. Like 3 weeks ago, when your prospect had that nasty spill out on Canyon," wrote the one that wasn't reported. Now she met his eyes. "Funny thing about accidents. You never know who might have seen something." The bikers exchanged glances. That accident hadn't been reported because it happened during a late-night gun shipment. No one was supposed to know about it. "We'll finish this later," the Sergeant Tutam told Rebecca, trying to salvage some authority, but his voice had lost its edge after they left. Rebecca sagged against the counter. "Thank you, Vicky, but you shouldn't have. They're dangerous." "Yes, they are," Victoria said, beginning to clean up the honey. "And they're getting more organized. That's what worries me." Rebecca got the mop. "Sheriff Dawson says they're just passing through, part of some big development deal." "Is that what he says?" Victoria's voice was carefully neutral. "Interesting, because that's not what his deputy told Elena Turner when they tried to pressure her into selling last month." She worked in silence for a moment, letting Rebecca process the implications. The store owner was smart. She'd see the pattern. "They're buying up all the land along Canyon Road," Rebecca said slowly, "or forcing people to sell." "But why? It's just old ranch country." "Maybe," Victoria said, finishing mopping. "But it's also the most direct route between the Canadian border and the interstate. Lots of empty land. No cellular coverage in some spots. Perfect for moving things that need to stay off the main roads." Rebecca's eyes widened. "You think I think," Victoria interrupted gently, "that you should take a vacation. Visit your sister in Denver. Just for a week or two." "I can't." The store. Victoria's voice was soft but carried absolute authority. "Please. Things are about to change in Providence Springs. When they do, it's better if certain people aren't around to see it." Outside, Victoria loaded her supplies into the truck. Her phone buzzed a text from Robert. "Sheriff Dawson stopped by after you left, asking questions about our plans for the ranch." Victoria smiled. The pieces were moving exactly as she'd predicted. Devils. Mayhem was getting nervous, pushing harder, which meant they had a deadline. Something big was coming. She drove to the outskirts of town, pulling onto a dusty turnout. From here, she could see Canyon Road stretching north toward Canada. 10 years ago, she'd been investigating a weapons trafficking ring that used rural medical transport companies. As covered, the case had led to Montana before her superiors suddenly shut it down. Now Devil's Mayhem was buying up land along the same route. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. The text was brief. "They're watching you. Getting nervous like old times." And Victoria deleted the message. Marshal Kane, her old partner, was still monitoring things. Good. She'd need backup when the time came. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the canyon as Victoria headed home. In her rearview mirror, she caught glimpses of a motorcycle following at a discreet distance. Amateur surveillance. They were watching her while she watched them. Perfect. Everything was falling into place. The ghost was about to come out of retirement and Devil's Mayhem MC was about to learn why weapons traffickers still woke up screaming at the memory of her name. But first, she had to give them exactly what they wanted. One seemingly vulnerable rancher's wife, ready to be used as leverage against her husband. The perfect target. The perfect trap. Victoria smiled as she drove. Some predators, after all, hunt best from inside the den. Dr. Joseph Bennett's clinic sat on the edge of Providence Springs, a modern medical facility built with old ranch money. As Victoria pulled into the parking lot, she noted 3 new security cameras, high-end models with infrared capability. Not the kind of equipment a small-town doctor normally installed. She found Bennett in his office, reviewing patient files on his laptop. The circles under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights. "Mrs. Kingsley," he said, closing the laptop quickly. "Your physical isn't until next week." "The cameras are new," Victoria observed, settling into a chair, expecting trouble. Joe Bennett glanced at his office door before speaking softly. 3 Devil's Mayhem members came in last night. Gunshot wounds. Said it was a hunting accident. He ran a hand through his graying hair. "Thing is, the wounds were from military-grade weapons, not hunting rifles." Victoria kept her expression neutral. "Hunting accident, that's what Sheriff Dawson's report says. But I saw the damage. Vicky, these were professional hits. Through and through, wounds calculated to disable without killing." Bennett leaned forward. "Someone sending messages. Someone who knows exactly what they're doing." Before Victoria could respond, raised voices erupted from the waiting room. 2 of Romano's enforcers burst in, the same ones from Mitchell's store. The larger one jabbed a finger at Bennett. "Those files you were looking at, hand them over now." Victoria remained seated, seemingly forgotten in the corner. She watched Bennett stand, noting how his hand moved toward his desk drawer. "Former military medicaid have a weapon within reach. Patient files are confidential," Bennett said firmly. "You know that." The second enforcer drew a pistol. "Amateur move, threatening instead of acting." Victoria catalogued his weaknesses automatically. Weight too far forward, grip too tight, eyes focusing on his target instead of scanning for other threats. "Confidential doesn't apply anymore, Doc. Boss wants those files." "And what exactly does your boss want with private medical records?" Victoria's voice cut through the tension. She hadn't moved from her chair, but something in her tone made both enforcers turn. "Stay out of this, Mrs. Kingsley," the armed one warned. "This ain't your business." "No." Victoria smiled slightly. "Tell me, did Romano send you for all of Dr. Bennett's files, or just the ones about last night's hunting accident?" The enforcers exchanged glances. The larger one stepped toward her. "You need to leave now." "Actually," Victoria rose smoothly, her movement making both men instinctively step back. "I think you need to deliver a message to Romano. Tell him if he wants to clean up his messes, he should teach his men better weapons discipline. 3 wounded by friendly fire. That's sloppy." The armed enforcer raised his pistol. "How did you? The same way I know about the shipment coming in tonight." Victoria's voice turned cold. "The same way I know why you're really buying up land along Canyon Road. The same way I know about the deal with the corrupt border agents." Both men went pale. That information was compartmentalized. Nobody outside Romano's circle should know about it. "Who are you?" the larger one demanded. "Just a rancher's wife," Victoria said, moving toward the door, her stride casual, but her path taking her inside their reaction zones. "For now, but you tell Romano something's changed in his operation. Someone's watching. Someone who knows how to look." She paused at the door. "Oh, and boys, next time you pull a gun in a doctor's office." She nodded toward Bennett's desk. "Check if the target is the only one armed." After she left, the enforcers found Bennett calmly holding a compact .45 under his desk. They left without the files. Victoria drove home along Canyon Road, her mind processing the encounter. The enforcer's reaction confirmed her suspicions. Devil's Mayhem was running professional weapons shipments, using the medical clinic to treat any accidents that occurred. But the operation was bigger than just guns. The land purchases, the border agent connections, the military-grade weapons, it all pointed to something larger. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Marshal Kane. "Satellite shows increased activity at abandoned Miller warehouse. Matches pattern from El Paso case." Victoria's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The El Paso case, her last official operation before being forced into retirement, an international weapons ring using motorcycle gangs as cover. The investigation had led to Montana before someone high up shut it down. Now the same patterns were emerging at home. She found Robert on the porch, watching the sunset. "They followed you from town," he said quietly. 2 bikes, keeping their distance. "They're getting bolder." Robert studied his wife's face. "You're going to let them take you, aren't you? It's the fastest way inside." Victoria touched his arm gently. "Romano's organization is moving something big, something worth killing for, but they're sloppy, overconfident, just like in El Paso. That case almost got you killed." "No." Victoria's eyes hardened. "That case got shut down because we got too close to someone powerful." someone who didn't want their connection to international weapons trafficking exposed. Now the same operation has surfaced here. She pulled out her phone, showing Robert the text from Kane. The Miller warehouse. That's where they'll take me. Perfect site. Lines crisscross the hills like escape routes drawn by a ghost's memory, each with easy access to Canyon Road, and Victoria Kingsley knew Romano would use them, he thought, like military, followed patterns, predictable as a tide. And if you're wrong? Robert asked, his voice low. Victoria smiled, and the expression made Robert shiver. It was that smile, the one that had once made cartel lieutenants confess rather than endure another hour of her questions. I'm not wrong. By this time tomorrow, Devil's Mayhem will make their move. They'll take me, use me to force the sale of the ranch. Her voice held no doubt. That's when the ghost comes out of retirement. That's when we finish what started in El Paso. As dusk swept over the Double R Ranch, Victoria made final preparations. Hidden cameras, emergency weapons stashed in caches, prepositioned supplies, everything a ghost might need. She hadn't spent the last decade pretending to be a rancher's wife. She'd been waiting, planning, watching. Now Devil's Mayhem had come back into the open, and all she had to do was let them think she was prey. Night settled over the ranch like a velvet cloak. In darkness, Victoria watched her screens. Cameras hidden across the land showed 5 Devil's Mayhem men slipping into position along the tree line. Not ordinary bikers, these moved with military precision. Her phone buzzed softly. Marshal Kane, facial recognition matches 3 of Romano's new guys to the same special forces unit that vanished in El Paso. The message read. She smiled in the shadows. It fit. The same soldiers who'd protected those shipments before her investigation had been shut down were here, now working for Romano. Headlights cut across the gravel drive to black SUVs, not bikes. These were professionals. They're here, she whispered. Last chance to do this differently, Robert said from behind her. No, she replied, checking her transmitter one last time. They need to think they're in control. I need inside. She touched his hand gently. Remember it. I don't signal every 6 hours. Call Kane. I remember, he said, voice tight. Just come back, always. The flashbang hit the front window precisely where she expected. Tactical teams breached with textbook perfection tomorrow. Units, synchronized entry. In another life, she would have admired them. Letting herself be found in the kitchen, she played the frightened victim. The team leader, face hidden behind black gear, zip-tied her wrists. Target secured, he radioed. They hustled her into the SUV. From behind a mask of panic, Victoria absorbed everything. 6-man team, latest gen tactical gear, military hand signals. This wasn't a biker raid. Romano waited by the vehicles, smiling coolly. Mrs. Kingsley, sorry for the dramatic entrance, but we had to make a point. What do you want? She asked, trembling same as before. The ranch, but now your husband has motivation. He grinned, empty and cold. You'll be our guest until the papers are signed. The drive to the Miller warehouse took 12 minutes. Victoria counted each turn. Inside, her suspicions hardened. This wasn't a stash house. It was an operations center. Proper guard rotations, surveillance hubs, encrypted comms. They tied her to a chair in a central office with a full view of the warehouse, letting her see everything. Arrogance, they wanted her intimidated. A man pulled up a chair. Don't worry, your husband's got the demands. You'll be free once the deed's done. Victoria stared through the glass, watching crates being unloaded from a new truck. Military containers, serial codes matching the El Paso operation. Why? She asked, letting tears blur her eyes. Why our ranch? Romano smirked. That land Canyon Road's about to matter. We need the final piece. A ruckus at the dock turned his head. One of his tactical men approached in haste. Problem with the manifests. Routing codes are off. Romano stiffened. Show me. At a nearby table, Victoria watched as documents were spread out. Laptops opened. The soldier pointed to a screen. Someone's tracking the serials. These numbers, they're flagged. Same pattern as El Paso. Romano's face darkened. Impossible. Those codes are military eyes only. Not anymore, the man replied in a whisper. Boss, this is just like El Paso when that federal marshal almost exposed the whole op. Behind her calm mask, Victoria smiled. They'd taken her exactly where she wanted to go. Her phone vibrated once. Kane's confirmation, the tracking devices she'd slipped onto their vehicles during the abduction were transmitting. All according to plan, Romano returned, worry now threading his features. Accelerate the timeline. Get the buyer on secure comms. Move the shipment tonight. Sir, the border crossing isn't ready, one of the men protested. Romano ran a hand through his hair. This is wrong. It's too similar to last time. Then he turned, eyes narrowing. Victoria let her fear masks crack for a heartbeat. He recoiled. Who are you? She smiled. This time the smile reached her eyes. You should have checked who you were dealing with. The El Paso traffickers made the same mistake. He went pale. The ghost, he whispered. Unease spread among his men. Even now, the name held power. Consider this your last warning, she said evenly. Release me, walk away, and it ends here. Keep going. And well, you remember El Paso. Secura, he barked. Double guard. No one in or out without my say. He leaned close. You're not stopping this. There's too much at stake. I know, she said. That's what I'm counting on. They left her alone. She started counting. 3 hours until Kane's team moved. 2 hours until the buyers arrived. Enough time to prepare. Through the windows she watched. Guards rotated every 4 hours. Tactical teams patrolled with structure. They were good, but not perfect.